वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम् शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणम् सूत्रभाष्यकृतं वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकन्नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तन्नमामि गोपाल कृष्ण भगवान की जय सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय So pranam to Bhagwan Shri Krishna, pranam to Jagat Guru Adi Shrimad Adi Shankaracharya, pranam to our Sadguru Param Pujya Dr. Kaka and our Acharya Param Pujya MuktaTai ji Gandhe. Pranam to Kenan sir who is present here amongst us. Pranam to all of you, and we will start with the third session of Trigun Vichar, which is we have understood how the gunas have come into existence. What are the characteristics of each guna? How they sort of play, how they manifest in our day-to-day life. What are the typical tendencies of each guna? And also, to some extent, we have seen how they manifest when they are mixed with each other in different proportion. More than the combination, it's the chemistry which keeps on changing within us, and it leads to the different behavioral patterns that we see in our day-to-day life. So before we begin the session today, I actually want to start with a little story. There was this king once upon a time in the ancient days. There was a king who was ruling over a kingdom. He was a very noble king, a very righteous, pious king who deeply cared for his citizens, and everything was going fine except for the fact that the king had no children. And obviously, the king and the queen they used to be a little upset about the fact that, no children. And back in the days, whatever technologies, IVF, whatever is available back in the days, they tried all of that for a few years. And then finally, they had a son. A moment of big joy, big occasion for the entire kingdom. And the king thought, I want to do something big for my citizens. So he called upon all his ministers and he said that I want to give something to the people of my kingdom, but not to all of them, to the people who really need something. So you identify from the kingdom people who are in need, and I want to give them something. So the ministers thought about who would be the right people. It would be people in orphanages, maybe poor people or whatever. Then they came up with a unique idea. So the ministers told the king that we always end up giving something to the common ordinary people in the state, but we should do something different this time. So what is different? They said that we have a prison here and we have all these prisoners. So we should go to the prison and give something to the prisoners. They have been there for what, last 20, 30, 40 years, and we should give something to them. So the king said, okay, that's a good idea. Let's go to the prison, and just one condition, only one object per person, one wish per person. You can ask for anything, any one thing, and it will be granted to you. Ask for anything. So the king and his ministers and his team went to the prison. They sat there. Maybe there was a big auditorium. And then they had a big line of all the prisoners. And everyone, actually, when they announced it, the scheme in the prison, everyone was very, very happy. For a long time, their wishes were going to get fulfilled. So in this big queue, every person who came forward and asked for different things. I want iPhone, I want to watch a movie. I have not watched a movie for what, 30 years. I want a really good set of clothes. I want to have a lot of mosquitoes. I want to have a mosquito net, maybe a soft bed, something like that. Every prisoner kept asking for one object, maybe more glamorous, more expensive, whatever. Everyone was granted the wish. And when it came to the last person in the queue, he came to the king and he said that, are you really going to fulfill my wish? And king said, yes, anything, any one wish, ask for it and it will be granted. So the last prisoner there said that, O king, set me free. And then king was surprised that there actually was a prisoner amongst all of them who actually wanted freedom, right? Now, if you reflect upon this story, it's a pretty basic story that anytime, I mean, all the prisoners had the choice to either become free or ask for something. But they ended up asking for something without realizing the fact that even after one wish was fulfilled, like I got iPhone, I got to watch a movie, I got whatever, bed, clothes, whatever, I am still going to be in the prison end of the day, and I'm still going to spend my entire life in the prison. Whereas I have a choice of becoming free, breaking through all these bondages. And that is what is called wisdom. And that is what the true freedom, getting out of the prison. And when I first heard this story, I thought this whole concept of freedom is, when we think about becoming free, we think about this concept on a very superficial level. For us, the freedom means very limited things. Freedom, I want freedom of expression. Okay. I want freedom of speech. I want freedom in my constitutional rights. So I was talking to a grandma in the family and she said she was very upset. So I said, what's the deal? And the grandma said that I have this granddaughter and who actually loves dressing up in Western clothes. And all these clothes are very weird, according to the grandmother. And she says that we have this constant fights over why are you wearing what you are wearing. And the granddaughter says that I am free, I need that freedom to dress up the way I want. I need that freedom to eat what I want. I need that freedom to go out of the house and come back to the house at whatever time I want. I want to live my life on my own terms. That is our entire idea of freedom, that I have a certain framework of what the ideal life is: dressing, eating, and as long as I can live my life according to the ideas within that framework, I think I am free. And Vedanta, when we come to spirituality, this basic question of freedom itself is raised before us, that is this really true freedom, And I vividly remember this entire incidents when this whole idea first struck to me, that whatever we think is freedom is not the true freedom, because it is only a limited freedom about limited parameters of our life. And it kind of resonated with me about what 22 years ago, maybe. After my marriage, I had relocated from India to the United States. My husband was staying there, and I went there on a dependent visa. So already I was very miserable that I'm there on the dependent visa. I have all this education. I cannot work. I cannot earn money. And I could not drive at that time. So I felt very, very suffocated. I felt very bound. And then obviously, days passed by, we did my master's and got the job, got the visa, and finally I started working. And finally I learned how to drive. And I remember there was this beautiful drive from our home along a lakeside, and I used to go to the office driving by that lake every day. And when I first drove there, I thought, okay, finally I am free. I can breathe, I can just drive and work and earn money. I don't have to depend on anyone. I don't have to ask money from anyone. I can go to the hotel at any time. I can go to cinema, watch a movie, do whatever I want. I am finally free. That's what I used to think. A couple of years went by. I was listening to a lecture. So while going to the office and coming back from the office, we had made it a point that we would listen to a lecture by our Guruji every day. So this was a lecture which was given by our other Guru, MuktaTai, and it was based on an OV in Dasbodh. The OV was written such that Prani sankalpe bandhala to jeevapane baddha zala. So she was trying to explain us the part of the verse Prani sankalpe bandhala. A human being is bound by the very desire that he has in his mind. So she was explaining it in her discourse that, you think you are free because you can go and watch a movie at any time. You think you are free because you can go to hotel and eat at any time. But what you don't realize is the very desire that I want to go to the hotel. I want to go and watch a movie. I want to go and work. I want to go and earn my own money. I want to drive. This desire itself are binding in nature. These bindings are internal, they are subtle. You don't realize that you are bound by your own desires. But so long as you have this chain of desires which are arising continuously in your mind, you will always be bound. That is the concept that she was explaining. And I vividly remember this drive when I was listening to the lecture. And it first struck me that very thought that every day when I get up in the morning, I get ready for my office, I dress up, I sit down in the car, start driving, go to the office. But this very desire that I want to go there and I will work, I will earn money, and after that, I will be happy. After earning money, after earning my own living, after that, I will be happy. This entire chain of thought itself was very binding in nature. It took me time, just being honest here and just confessing, it took me time to come to terms with this entire concept of understanding the difference between external bondage and internal bondage. External bonding, when someone puts me in handcuffs or locks me in a room, that's a bondage I understand, and I want to break free from that bondage. But then there are these internal bondages. One bondage is of course the desire, which the constant desires that I want this, I don't want this, I like this, I don't like this. All these desires are binding in nature. That is one thing. And the second bondage, which is mainly the central theme of our discourse, is this topic of three gunas. We just saw in the recap that all these three gunas are binding in nature. There is sattva guna, which binds you in a different fashion, rajo guna, which binds you in a different fashion, and tamo guna, which binds you in a different fashion. In Bhagavad Gita, there is this verse, Sattvam Sukhe Sanjayati, Rajah Karmani Bharata, Jnanam Avrutya tu Tamha, Pramade Sanjayat tuta, which basically recaps the bondages of all three gunas. Sattva guna binds you because it binds you to the feeling of happiness, to complacency. Rajoguna binds you to feeling of, uh, to the tendency to constantly act, to action. And tamoguna binds you to either laziness or to violence, hatred, or some cruel feelings. So all these three gunas are binding in nature. And this Bhagavad Gita shlok, Sanjayati, the word Sanjayati means conquers. That Sattva Guna conquers in my life because it defeats me. When I first heard the explanation of this shloka, it was saying that all these three gunas, they constantly conquer and they constantly defeat us. Why do they defeat us? Because they impel us, they propel us, they mandate us to behave in a certain way. They mandate us to express our reaction in certain ways in certain situation. We are not free to react the way we want. If you have carefully observed, if you have carefully introspected the reactions that we give in certain situations, so many times it happens that I did not even want to say it to him. I did not even want to react like that. I don't know what came to me. What came to me was this impulse of a certain guna which has caught me from within, which has kept me in a bondage from within. And because it mandates me to behave in a certain way, I don't even realize that this internal impulse is binding me. And all these internal impulses, which is the result of chemistry of gunas within me, it keeps me in an internal bondage all the time, all my life, without me realizing it. And I kind of become happy with a superficial notion of freedom that I'm free. Bhagwan Shankaracharya has written a beautiful verse. If I'm not wrong, the name of the text is Sarva Vedanta Sara Sangraha or Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Sara Sangraha, in which there is a Sanskrit verse. The verse says, Antar bandhena bandhasya kim bahirbandha mochanehi. You are bound from within. What is the use of trying to break free from the external bondage? You are already bound from within. Tat antarbandha muktyartham kriyatam krutivihi krutihi. All your efforts should be directed to break you free from the internal bondages, not so much from the external bondages. So the very first thing Shankara says is identify what your internal bondages are. And for us to identify these internal bondages, The deep understanding of all these three gunas and their manifestations truly helps us. These three gunas give us a sneak peek into the human psyche, not just our personal own human psyche, but also the psyche of the person who is in front of us. We briefly sort of saw it in the recap why people behave the way they behave. And if we understand how these gunas interact and manifest individually and in combination with each other, it gives us great control and great insight as to how we can deal in a certain situation. So today we are going to talk mainly about the first part that we want to talk about is when it comes to people, other people in our lives, how can we best make use of the knowledge which is given to us by the manifestation, by the description of these three gunas, and how we can deal in certain situations. Now, the points that I'm going to talk about, they are not given in any book, but I'm just going to speak from personal experiences that how this study of three gunas has personally helped me in my own spiritual journey, because I think majority of the conflicts that we face, these conflicts stem from the fact that we have to interact with people within our family, within our society, within our neighborhood, and within our professional life. We have to interact with people all the time. And every person has a separate guna chemistry. And unless I really observe and understand and accept the person for who he is, this acceptance is very important. A lot of times I even understand, but I don't accept, right? So this study of three gunas has again helped me personally to make keen observations. Number two, to understand which guna is at play at any given time in any given situation. And thirdly, accept it for what it is without trying to change it too much when it comes to other people. The basic thumb rule that Dr. Kaka has told us, we should use the knowledge of three gunas when it comes to other people, just understand and accept. Don't try to change too much. Spiritual philosophy says, Vedanta says, that even that person himself or herself does not have much control over his own guna chemistry. Unless he is really aware, unless he is really conscientious, even he cannot change himself. So you should not try to go and change the other person too much. Just understand and accept. That is the thumb rule when it comes to other people. But the thumb rule when it comes to myself is different, that I should first understand why I am behaving the way I am behaving, and then I should seriously, consciously try to change my own behavior. So for other people, just observe and accept. For myself, deliberately try to change. Don't just be complacent ki nahi bhai rajo guna hai, that's why I'm behaving in this manner. Don't be complacent and don't give excuses of three gunas when it comes to your own behavior. So let's just look at few examples as to how we can put this theory of guna into the practice. The first place where the study of gunas can help us is seriously, it helps us to curb our tendency to constantly compare people among themselves or people with us, constantly compare people and situation. This is one major factor where three gunas can truly help us. I went to a party, a birthday party, lot of children in the age group of 4 to 8. They were playing there and there was cake and all these birthday celebrations were going on. There was one child among all that chaos. He sat down with a book in a corner and he was just like reading. He did not want to participate. He was just sitting in a corner. His mother was coming and nagging him कि भाई बीच में आ जाओ सारे बच्चों के साथ खेलो. But the child wasn't ready. He sat in a corner, quietly kept reading. There was this other little girl, very cute. She came with a makeup box, a little makeup kit. And she was sitting there trying to do the makeup, the lipstick, and doing hair and powder and whatnot. I just went next to her and I asked her, "What are you doing?" And she told me, "This is what my mom does every morning. And I have observed my mom, and I'm just trying to replicate what she does." So there was this another girl trying to play with the toys. There was this boy trying to play with the gun. Very interestingly, there was a little child there was a carpet there. He sat down on the carpet and he was looking into the carpet. He was looking at little ants or mosquitoes or some, I don't know, insects, very small insect. And he had a little key. And with his key, he was trying to actually torture the small ants or trying to kill the small ants. Now, all of these, not kidding, these are all real experiences. These are children between the age group of 4 and 8. They have not been put through the rigorous routine of the world or anything, just very, very natural tendencies. This little child sitting onto the carpet is trying to torture the ants, torture the small insects for no reason whatsoever. Then there are these kids who are trying to bully each other and pinch each other for no reason at all, just for fun, just for kicks. Now, when I watch all these children, if I see them just as children, our Guruji gave us a word that when you look at a person, don't look at him just as a person. Look at him just as a combination of three gunas. This is not a person, a name and form, or a body in front of you. This is just a combination of three gunas which is at play at any given time, which is standing in front of you. And in that birthday party, I could clearly make out that tamas is dominant, rajas is dominant, sattva is dominant. We could clearly see all these patterns. When does the problem arise? The problem arises when I look at all these kids and I have one of the feelings, my son is very good. He's very well behaved. He doesn't misbehave like this. He doesn't torture the insects like this. And my son is very good. Or look at that child. I mean, he's sitting there in a corner. He's reading a book and he's sitting so quietly. And why is my son not like this? Why is he always creating a havoc? Now, this child gets up early in the morning. He does the painting. He does the sports. He does this. He does that. And my son does not do it. We end up constantly comparing our situation, our people, our family members with other family members, and that creates a big problem in our life. The study of three gunas has personally helped me in this one aspect, that that child is that child. Even for the same mother, if you have two or more kids, you would observe that every child comes with his own set of preferences and likings and dislikings. One child behaves in a certain manner. From the same set of parents, if there is a second child who was given exactly same upbringing, same samskaras, same food, same school, same classes, same everything, growing up together, one child behaves in a very different manner from the other child. So one place where a study of trigunas can really help us is look at every child, every person, every adult individually as a combination of gunas. The reason he is behaving, why he is behaving, is because he has a certain guna dominant on which even the child or the adult has no control unless he consciously tries. So we as parents can only try to influence and change the children only so much. There is a limited bandwidth to which we can influence and change the other person, but it's a very limited bandwidth. Understand that that person has his own set of prarabdha, purva sukrut. His predetermined set of gunas is based on his own past karmas. They are not based on the sanskaras that you are giving right now. Your present day sanskaras can change to a certain extent, but we cannot change the default constitution of a person because we want him to change. Unless he wants to change, nothing is going to happen. So this comparison, the tendency to comparison can be curbed to a great extent if we understand the gunas. That is the first part. The second point in which the three gunas can help is there is this tendency, again I am speaking from my own personal experiences, that in the past, whenever events happened, whenever there were people get-togethers, people used to speak in many different ways among each other or to me. And invariably, there were incidents when I used to feel deeply, deeply hurt by what someone said. I used to take it really, really personally. Someone came and offended me. Someone came and said some nasty things to me. Like 20 years ago, someone said something to me. Now 20 years have passed by. I'm still sticking to the same incidents in my mind. Now, if you observe when people speak, some people speak very gently. Some people speak very thoughtfully. Some people are very reticent. They are very calculated. Some people give opinions only when they are asked. That is one set of people. The other set of people, they are very loud, very assertive, very expressive. They talk all the time. Some people are also very boasting in nature, just by nature. You don't have to teach it to them. They're just self-promoting by nature. Some people have a way of, very hurtful speech, taunting others, being sarcastic, mocking or demeaning others and all that stuff. Now, when someone speaks to me in a mocking, hurtful manner, I take it personally because I think he wants to hurt me. That might be the case. He actually hurt me, but the reason he's speaking the way he's speaking is because the tamas is dominant in him at that time. If you don't look at him as a person, if you look at him just as dominant tamoguna, a chemistry of tamoguna at that time, and which is why he's yelling, which is why he's being sarcastic, which is why he's being rude, right? So to some extent, this feeling, the feeling of being hurt, being affected, and carrying that wound for a long time, this whole tendency can be curbed, can be restrained, can be brought down to a great extent, because as the understanding of the three gunas and how they play, as we start to see these patterns more and more explicitly among other people, we tend to get less hurt and less affected by what is going on around us, and we learn to see it in a more objective manner. That's the second incidence that I can quote. Then there are different tendencies to work. We have seen a number of examples. So if there is spare time, some people just would go and watch movies. Hey, let's order some food, or maybe let's try some different recipes. So if I have spare time, there are some people who spend all their time in getting entertained. Some people who try to spend all their time in building something. Even in their spare time, they will try to maybe create a Lego home, or build something, or clean something, maybe work on a startup idea, maybe try to clean the home, but they're trying to constantly do something. Our Guruji, Dr. Kaka, in his spare time, he actually never had spare time, but we were told a story. I have not seen it personally, but we have heard it from many people. He was a doctor by profession, and he used to see patients. He used to do his medical practice in a very small village 50 years ago when there were no facilities. And in a small village, he was a single doctor. He was an anesthetist, he was a gynecologist, and he used to be a physician and did all sorts of operations. So his clinic would be full of visitors all the time. In between two patients, even if he had 2 minutes in between as a spare time, he would take out the book of Dhaneshwari. He would spend all his time reading the book and learning the spiritual philosophy. And then we know that there are people who are lazy and give excuses and miss their deadlines, and we have seen all those traits, behavioral traits, right? What happens when we interact with these different kinds of people, especially within our family, we tend to become very irritated. I am efficient in certain ways, I am meticulous in certain ways, but family members with whom I stay day in and day out, they are not equally meticulous. They are not equally efficient. I take something out from my bookcase and I keep it exactly in the same place, but other family members, they take out the book and will keep it some other place. And invariably, most of the fights within the family are about different working styles. And these fights, these kind of constant altercations go on and on and on until we realize that the person who is sitting next to me, who is part of the same family, maybe my brother, maybe my sister, with whom I grew up, has a different guna chemistry which is playing at any given time. He is not doing it deliberately to annoy me, whatever it is he is doing. It is just that the gunas, the forces within him, are impelling him or her to behave in a certain way. Unless and until we learn to look at the gunas at play within our family, within our immediate family members, the amount of fights and quarrels will never go down. So, as much as we think about people outside of our home, even people within our home are bound by their own set of three gunas. And it is very, very important for us to really accept the fact that this particular child of mine, or brother, or sister, or spouse, or parents, take anyone, they have their own guna chemistry over which I have no control. And this acceptance can bring a lot of peace in our day-to-day life. So that's second, third example I wanted to give. And we can come up with many such examples. The second part, which is the most important part, there is a verse in Dhaneshwari on which Dr. Kaka has given a long lecture, and we will try to understand the nitty-gritties of it. There is an OV in Dhaneshwari which says, "Tu gunatrayate avheri, mi maze he na kari." Gunatrayate, three gunas. Avhera. The word avhera in Marathi means refuse. Mi maze he na kari. So what Jnaneshwar Maharaj is suggesting in this verse is, number one, when it comes to changing the default composition of gunas within yourself, the first part which is important is awareness. Understand what guna is being dominant in me right now. And number two, he says refuse. Aware as in someone gives me a gift and I says, okay, I don't want your gift. I'm not going to take it. So he said that all these gunas which are residing within you are constantly trying to give you something, trying to push you in a direction. The moment you recognize it And the moment you recognize that if I succumb to this impulse, I am going to be bound. Back in the days when I learned this for the first time, I used to actually visualize it in my mind that I'm sleeping on the bed. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, way past my time to get up. And my Rajoguna says, my Tamoguna says, nahi, abhi आधा घंटा और सोते हैं. The moment you recognize this impulse that there is this Tamoguna which is mandating me to stay in bed, I used to visualize that the Tamoguna is actually binding me. And no, I don't want to be bound. I don't want to be a slave to this Tamoguna. Every time you recognize that this impulse is playing within me, know that you are becoming slave to your own impulse. You would not want to become a slave. And this awareness and understanding, every time I want to stand in front of mirror and I want to spend a lot of time doing the makeup, this thought, this awareness has to come from within, that it is Rajoguna which is mandating me to stand in front of mirror for so much time. And it is Rajoguna which is putting me into the bondage. It is Rajoguna which is making me a slave, which is making me a gulam. And I don't want to be a gulam of this Rajoguna. I don't want to be a gulam of this Tamoguna. So this actual visualization, this actual awareness can help us as a first step, that be aware that it is Rajoguna, it is Tamoguna which is propelling you to behave in a certain manner, and try to refuse it, try to decline. Job offer, if I have job offers from 5 different companies, I'm going to say no to 4 different companies. I don't want your offer. So Rajoguna, thank you, but no to your offer. Tamoguna, thank you, but no to your offer. And keep on identifying, keep on refusing. And this is a very tedious, gradual process, that every time that impulse comes, every time I have to refuse it. I have to refuse succumbing to that impulse. But as I said, this is working on the root cause of the problem, that Rajoguna and Tamoguna, if I identify that it is the Rajas or Tamas at play, if I'm not getting up in the morning, I'll try to fix an alarm, maybe try to do 50 different external things which would help me in getting. But instead of working on the external factors, they are saying you work on the internal factor, which is the Rajas and Tamas, identifying the impulses and trying to refuse their gifts, refuse their bondages. That is the first step. And the second step, which is the most important part of our spiritual journey and which is also very helpful in our day-to-day life and transactions, is increase the proportion of sattva. And this is where we can actually make a lot of small lifestyle changes which can help us both in our spiritual study and the worldly path, the worldly pursuit. When it comes to sattva guna, there are different things we do to increase the default proportion of sattva that we have within us. Our Guruji has given us 4 or 5 different pointers, right? One is keep a very diligent tab on the company that we keep, the people with whom we hang out. Number 2 is food intake. Number 3 is sensory inputs. And number 4 are the activities and conversations that we engage in. Company, food, sensory inputs, and activities. All of these need to be slowly channelized, gradually channelized, so that more and more our constitution can be changed to become more and more sattvic. Some of these things are very subtle, we don't even realize their impact, but let's talk about a few examples. The first part is the company of sattvic people, people with whom we hang out on a day-to-day basis. Now, there are 2 kinds of people within our family, and then there are people outside of our family. Within our family, we don't have much choice, whether it's Rajas or Tamas or extreme Tamas or extreme Rajas. We still have to live with the same person. But outside of our immediate family, we have a lot of choice with whom we socialize, with whom we keep our company. Just observe these small patterns, incidents which has really happened. We went to visit Pune recently, and we met an old friend of ours, a very old family friend who does not come from a spiritual circle. The friend said, family friend of ours, hey, let's take a drive and go to some place, and we wanted to do some activity there. We sat in his car. He started the car and we started driving. The moment he started the car an old Hindi film song started playing in his car. Now, this film song we had not heard for past 20-25 years. We had not heard this song. Completely forgotten that song. But that day, for 20 minutes, when we were with him in the car and we listened to all these film songs, which we had thought we had completely forgotten, but that 20 minutes of drive and listening to the songs came and stuck in our mind. Now the drive got over, the dinner got over, we came home and we started with our routine. But the old song kept on playing in our mind, it stuck to our mind, and I could not get rid of that song for a long time. Now that is the effect. If I have a friend who says ki chalo bhai yoga karne chalte hai and constantly pushes me, then I'll tend to do yoga. If my friend is into physical fitness, I will try to become more physically fit. If my friend is into movies and songs and web series, and if those are the discussions I'm engaging in and day out, on weekends, on my phone calls, on my WhatsApp, if someone is going to ask me ki kya dekha, what happened in the next episode, if that is the company I keep, all of that is going to have an influence on my mind, and all of that is going to increase the proportion of rajas in my mind. So we have to be very, very careful about the company, of people with whom we are hanging out on a day-to-day basis. As I said, there are people within our family whom I cannot avoid. So if there is someone within my family who says ki chalo bhai movie ke liye chalte hai, I cannot say no all the time. And our Guruji came up with a little trick at that time. His wife used to love watching movies. So he said, I would take my wife, we would go to a cinema theater, we would sit down and watch a movie. She would be very engaged in watching a movie, and I would close my eyes and I would keep on chanting the mantra of the God that was given to him. Now, it's a difficult task. A movie is playing in front of you, but in your mind, you're kind of going over the spiritual lectures that you have heard, maybe the book you have read, or maybe the mantra that you've been given, and you keep on chanting it. So that's the kind of balance we can do as householders, that even if we are within the company of very rajas or very tamas people, we can still somewhat, to some extent, insulate ourselves. That is one thing. And to the extent possible, avoid the company of rajas and tamas people. There's an incident I remember, maybe we were having a conversation somewhere, wherein we were given a question that many of us fear this fact, FOMO, what we call fear of missing out, that all my friends, all my family members, and especially the fact that all of you are staying in Germany and all of you are staying away from your family. And in Germany, your friends are your family. So if we stop hanging out with all the people, all the social groups, and if we become way too spiritual, then we will be isolated from the society in general. And that's a dangerous place to be in. So to some extent, we have to socialize, but then we have to find out smart ways of being there, but not being there, or maybe being there for a shorter period of, or maybe going there, but not being overly engaged in those conversations. Somehow finding ways to insulate ourselves from those external influences is very critical. So where possible, isolate yourself, and where not possible, insulate yourself. That's the mantra when it comes to the company of people. In fact, in the spiritual field, they say that it is in fact okay to have company of a tamas person, but it is very dangerous to have company of a rajas person. For people who are spiritually inclined, they don't get very deeply affected by very tamasic people, but they get deeply affected by very rajasic people. So rajas people are more dangerous for our spiritual pursuit than the tamas people. So when it comes to the company of people, if you are very, very serious in your spiritual pursuit, then isolate. To the extent possible, isolate until you develop the habit to insulate yourself from the external influences. So isolation and insulation, these are the two words we can remember when it comes to the company of sattvic people. Then there are more important points about food intake, about sensory inputs, and about activities and conversations. Very important part of cultivating or nourishing sattva guna is the food that we consume. In Bhagvad Gita, in the 17th chapter, there are 3 verses given which explain what is the sattvic food, what is the rajas food, and what is the tamas food. I will leave it up to you to look up the actual verses. Ayush Sattva Balarogya, that is where it starts. But there is a lot of food awareness these days on the internet, on the WhatsApp, on the social media. So some of the basic things for sattvic food, they have said that foods that increase the lifespan, mental clarity, give us strength, give us health, give us happiness, affection, and food which are juicy, oily, stable, rasya, snigdha, sthira, rudya, ahara, satvika, priyaha. I will not go into the details of this verse, but we'll just talk about a few things which we can actually use on a day-to-day basis. But simple things like fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, whole grains, and milk and ghee and honey and all of that. Lightly spiced, home cooked meals. Sattvic food ultimately means. Remember one thing. This was one thing which was told to us by our other guru, MuktaTai, that it is not just the food that you consume that affects you and your gunas constitution. It is the money with which you have bought the food. How was that money earned, right? When I go to buy the groceries in my house, I use money. And where has that money come from? It has come from my own work. So when I go to work, am I doing ethical work and earning that money, earning that Lakshmi? Because the money with which I'm buying the food or I'm buying the ingredients, if that money has come to me from unethical ways of doing work, then the food that I buy with that money is not going to help the sattva guna within me, is going to create an obstacle in my spiritual journey. So the money with which you buy the food, the source of that money matters, number one. Number two, the way in which you cook the food. Remember, it's not just the food, but the mood. Let's say I'm cooking the food right now, but I'm very, very angry right now because someone said something nasty to me. Maybe I remember something which I happened in the past, or maybe I'm upset at my official colleague, or maybe I'm upset about my son, something. And I'm carrying all that anger or some sort of jealousy, some sort of greed, some sort of something in my mind is playing, and I'm still cooking, right? Maybe the food is awesome. Maybe the food is absolutely great. But the mood with which I cooked the food, that entire mood has gone into the food. And when I consume that food, that entire mood, that anger, that greed, that lust, that jealousy has gone into my system. So it is the money, it is the mood, it is the emotion with which I cook the food. The third part is emotion with which I serve the food. All these little things matter, right? Now, suppose I have cooked the food, everything was fine, but at the time of serving the food, something has gone wrong. Maybe I received a bad news, maybe I'm watching TV, or something has happened. And even while serving the food, if I am carrying certain sort of anger or jealousy, that is going to go into that food and going to go into my system. So our Guru Mandatai said that we have to take care of the entire chain when it comes to food, right from the source and ingredients, cooking, serving, and then the way we eat. Everything was created in a perfect manner. But I'm sitting in front of TV. I have this phone which is buzzing right next to me with WhatsApp and YouTube and whatnot. That whole TV and newspaper and conversations on the dining table, everything has an effect on the food and everything goes into my system. Everything affects the constitution of my sattva guna. That is how careful we need to be when it comes to consuming food. And the details of the foods are given in the actual verses. You can look it up. The rajasic food, which is very bitter, extremely sour, very salty, all the samosas and kachoris and the tamarind chutneys and bhel and whatnot, very, very rajas in nature. Okay to eat it once in a while, but if I'm having all that rajas food every day, day in and day out, deep fried snacks, spicy curries, Rajogun is gonna go up. Rajogun is gonna increase many, many fold through this food. So be very careful about the food choices that you make on a daily basis. The sattvic food is basically all the boring food which no one likes, right? No spices, nothing deep fried. And again, I'm not gonna go into the food blog here. All of us have that much basic understanding. I assume that much. And then the tamasic food is basically the food which is left over, right? Back in the days, if you remember, there was this concept, at least in India, it is still pretty, the concept is still pretty strong that when we make the food, we eat it within 3 hours. We don't generally carry over the food. If at all we have to carry it over, we do it from the morning to evening, that is still okay. But if the food passes through the night time, the idea is that we should not carry over the night's leftover and eat in the morning, because within the night the tamasic forces are at play. Tamasic forces are very dominant, and whatever is leftover food, the tamas is gonna go in that food and going to come into my system when I consume it the next day. So within India, these things are still followed to some extent. I know in outside countries, people don't have that much household help. People cannot even cook on their own. People cannot even cook daily fresh food on their own because there is not so much time on hands. So again, we have to understand the framework in which we are living, and as much as possible, try to avoid the leftovers. I also remember this, that back in the days when we used to travel in the train, our parents, especially my father, would never allow to eat anything in the train. Those people with chanas, and they would come with different snacks while going through the train, but it was strictly prohibited eating outside food, eating hotel food in our growing up years. But then when we grew up, we became mature and we started eating out. But now I understand why our parents and grandparents avoided eating outside. When I go to the hotel, I don't know what kind of person is cooking it, where the ingredients have come from. There is obviously the nutrition and hygiene part of it, but there is also this guna part of it. The person who is cooking, serving everyone is going to have effect on my system. So be very careful. And then again, coming back to the realities of present day and life, our Guruji has given us a solution. In today's day and time, we cannot completely avoid the food which is being cooked outside. We have to go out, we have to eat out. Even within our houses now, we have cooks who come here and cook for us, right? So I don't have control over how my cook is going to cook the food for me. So for that, the solution which is given is mantra chanting. That if you consume the food while chanting the mantra within your system, in your mind, if you are continuously chanting the mantra and consuming the food, whatever are the doshas that come with the food, those doshas are nullified, or at least the effect of tamas and rajas is reduced to a great extent. So in our present day, if you at all have to eat out, rather than making comments about this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, just try to stick to the mantra. Try to stick to some sort of divine thought while eating the food so that these ill effects are nullified during your consumption of the food. You just look at the way enlightened saints or the Santa Mahatmas are eating food. Right? They may be given a really Rajasic food, something that they really like, but look at the way they are eating, the way they are consuming the food. So one day they go to a place, and the lady who is cooking forgot to put the salt in the curry, and he eats it without even saying any word. And then the lady sits down to eat and says, oh, okay, I forgot to put the salt in the curry today. So this person, the enlightened saint, says कि नहीं कोई बात नहीं है, एक आध दिन नमक नहीं खाए तो it's good for your body, it's good for your system. And the second house that he goes to, the lady puts too much salt, it becomes excessive salt in the curry. Again, the saint doesn't say anything, he will consume it. And when the lady realizes कि मैंने ज़्यादा नमक डाल दिया था या फिर ज़्यादा मिर्ची डाल दिया था, he says, no, it's okay. Sometimes it is okay to eat more salty food and more spicy food. It's good for your system. It builds immunity and resistance and whatnot. So you give him whatever food, he will appreciate the food and then consume it. Again, this is not about the food, but it is about the consumption. And by watching all these things, it gives us a samskara. It creates an impact in our mind. And all of these things, factors together, help us in, again, changing our own chemistry and constitution. I have seen this in different families. The families where the parents are very, very fussy about the food, the children end up becoming very fussy and demanding. The families where the parents are relatively okay and accommodating about their food choices, the children are also in a similar fashion. They grow up in the similar fashion. There can be exceptions, but which is why, again, the company matters as much as the food, not just the food. When it comes to sattva guna, I wanted to talk about these main things. One was the company of the people. Second was the food, the kind of food, the way we consume it. Third was, it's not just the physical food that we eat through the mouth, but all the sensory inputs are going to have a very profound effect on the guna chemistry that we have within us. Even a 30-second ad can create that turmoil within us, which was never there. Speaking from very, very personal examples again. There is this concept of DP. I didn't know it for quite some time, but someone taught me that this is how you go and look at the DP or that status or something. I didn't know it. So then on that day, when I was looking through the DPs, a person had posted a DP ki, oh, we visited Jaisalmer and this was a Jaisalmer fort. And it was a very beautiful picture from the Jaisalmer fort. And the moment I came out and I had some time, I went on the Google internet ki kya hai, it looks so beautiful. I want to go to Jaisalmer. Now this reaction was so instinctive. I did not even realize I'm doing this because I saw the Jaisalmer fort picture in the DP. This kind of behavior is going to be very, very deeply affected by everything we consume. And we have to understand that pattern, right? What I hear, what I watch, what I listen to, what I talk, what I read, everything is going to have an impact on me. And the reason our mind cannot sit still when it is meditating, the reason why our mind cannot focus when it is chanting or trying to understand some intricate spiritual concepts is because throughout the day we keep on taking these sensory inputs and they keep on throwing us off balance every time. All these sensory inputs are like passive smoking, right? Like, I don't like violent movies, I don't like war movies, but even if I watch that 30-second scene of a war movie which is very violent or angry or some sort of scene, it stays in me, it sticks in my mind, and it keeps coming back to me. So again, be very, very careful. Now you may think that this is a very restrictive way of life. If I have to stop watching everything, listening to everything, what is the use? What is the use of living life? All these questions can come to our mind. But then if you want to be free ultimately, then we have to get rid of all these small bondages. The ultimate freedom will only come when we are free from these little impulses and little desires. We don't realize how stuck, how bound, and how caged we are. We are like those prisoners, wanting little things. Mujhe iPhone chahiye, mujhe BMW chahiye, and all of that. But you have a choice to be free and get out of the prison once and for all. We don't exercise that choice and we become happy with these little pieces which are thrown at us by the world, by the society. Vedanta says, get out of this prison. There was also this podcast. You can all watch it. You don't have to watch the whole podcast, but it's a very interesting podcast by Dr. Daniel Amen. That's his name. The name of the channel is The Diary of the CEO. That is the name of the YouTube channel. And Stephen Bartlett. Yeah, Stephen Bartlett conducts all these podcasts. So this person, Dr. Daniel Amen, is a psychiatrist and he treats a lot of patients, celebrity patients in USA. So this psychiatrist, he said that he was not speaking from a guna perspective. He was speaking purely from a brain perspective. Whether you consume alcohol, whether you consume drugs, whether you are on any medication, whether you sleep or do not sleep, and whatever social media you consume has a very profound effect on your brain. He has some sort of mechanism or a company which does your brain scan. And your brain scan as of now, and if you keep on consuming the social media or drugs with the same rate, then this is what your brain would look like 5 years from now. This is how he has conversations with his patients. That if we continue the same lifestyle that we have on the same path, then this is what our brain would look like when we become old. And it's a very interesting take. It's a physiological or neuroscientific take on the whole social media scene. But sensory inputs are dangerous even for our regular worldly well-being, and they are dangerous even for our spiritual well-being. So we have to be very discreet when it comes to the sensory inputs. That's one more point I wanted to make. And sort of we can extrapolate the same thing when it comes to activities and conversations, whether it is reading books or listening to talks. Or our Guruji had told us a very nice thing. If at all you want to go somewhere, go take a walk in the nature without a camera, without cell phone. Actually spend some time looking at the sky, looking at the trees, looking at the birds, looking at the flowers. There are no actions, reactions, and going into the nature will really calm down your mind and will really increase the proportion of sattva guna. Engage in some volunteer activities, meditation, chanting, all of that. So all of these activities together will help you build a more sattvic constitution and lifestyle. Ultimately, the place where we want to go, which is Brahman, which is consciousness, which is our true nature, is beyond the influence of three gunas. Sattva guna is like that stick. If you have seen the pole vault, the long heighted pole, A person jumps from one end to the other with the help of that pole. But when he goes to the other end, he has to leave the pole. He cannot stick to the pole because it took me to the other end. So sattva guna is like that pole, which is going to take me from one end to the other, which is going to take me from the fact that I am the body, the realization that I am the body, to the realization that I am Brahman, I am consciousness. Sattva guna really helps me in that journey. It takes me to that threshold, but when I go to the threshold, I have to also let go of the sattva guna. The consciousness, the Brahman, which is my true nature, is beyond the three gunas, beyond the three times, beyond the three bodies. And knowing I am that is the ultimate freedom, is the ultimate moksha. And if you want the ultimate freedom, then we have to sort of bind ourselves with these small rules and regulations of food and company and TV and whatnot. Because all these rules and regulations will take me to the ultimate freedom. Otherwise, I will remain bound in this worldly thing. The way we have faith or shraddha in our day to day life, similar way, if I learn to keep the faith in the spiritual text on the authentic people, it is going to lead me to my goal pretty soon or relatively with less struggle. One thing that we need to know that people who are atheists and people who do not believe in any kind of God or religion, even they can go on the spiritual path and even they can realize who they truly are. But for that, the kind of buddhi which is needed is very, very subtle and very ekagra, and different kind of buddhi is needed to understand the spiritual philosophy purely from an intellectual perspective. And because all of us have not developed that kind of buddhi yet, which is why we have to keep the help of faith and religion and many other practices which are prescribed to us. But for an exceptional person like Vivekananda or something like that, purely the methodology of self-inquiry, Raman Maharishi would work, and they don't have to take help of the faith in the other systems so much. So with this, I think we will stop the main talk here. Hari Om. That's it.